So, after a whole year of some pretty intense trade friction, a huge India US trade deal has just been announced. But the real story here isn't just the deal itself, it's who announced it and what that tells us about the whole agreement. And here's the first kind of strange thing: the announcement came from the US, not India. That immediately raised this one crucial question that's hanging over this entire agreement: who really benefits from this deal?
All right, so let's get into it. To really figure out who wins and who might lose here, we've got to start by breaking down the key terms of the agreement.
At its heart, this deal is a massive trade-off. On one hand, India is going to see much lower tariffs on its exports to the US. But, and this is a big but, in return, the US gets pretty much unprecedented access to India's market. And it's all backed by these enormous purchasing commitments.
For India, the biggest win, without a doubt, is on tariffs. U.S. duties on exports like textiles, leather, and gems, these are industries that employ millions of people, have been slashed from a crippling 50% all the way down to just 18%.
But of course, a concession like that comes at a price. In return for that tariff cut, India has agreed to drop nearly all of its own tariffs on goods coming from the U.S. This is a complete 180 on its long-held protectionist stance.
And here is where the sheer scale of this deal becomes truly staggering. As the centerpiece of the whole agreement, India has committed to purchasing over $500 billion worth of American products, $500 billion. So what exactly is on that $500 billion shopping list? Well, the commitments are really focused on three main areas: energy, so we're talking crude oil and coal, a lot of agricultural products, and of course, technology. And the commitments go way beyond just money. India also agreed to a major geopolitical shift. It's going to stop buying that discounted oil from Russia and instead start sourcing it from the US and Venezuela.
Okay, so with India making all these huge commitments, you've got to ask, what's the upside for them? Let's take a look at what they really stand to gain from all this. Well, the main benefit is a lifeline for some of those key export industries we talked about. With tariffs cut from 50% to 18%, Indian goods in these huge, labor-intensive sectors suddenly become way more competitive in the US. This is a chance to not just recover billions in losses, but also to stabilize jobs for millions of workers. The deal also reportedly has a secondary benefit: duty-free access to some high-end American tech, things like AI chips and green energy machinery. That said, the source material does suggest this might be a pretty minor part of the overall upside. So that's the potential gain. But now we have to flip the coin over, because as the source material really emphasizes, this deal comes with some pretty significant hidden costs and risks for India's economy. Let's start with that energy shift. The estimated annual cost of giving up cheap Russian oil is a staggering $14.6 billion. That's a direct multi-billion-dollar hit to the economy, right out of the gate. But the costs go even deeper. By getting rid of its own tariffs, India is basically rolling out the red carpet for cheap, heavily subsidized U.S. products to flood its domestic market. This puts major Indian sectors like steel, dairy, grains, and poultry directly at risk. And we can actually put a number on the human cost of that threat. The source points out that in the dairy and poultry sectors alone, the livelihoods of an estimated 80 million rural households are now potentially at risk from all this new competition. And this creates a huge dilemma for Indian agriculture. You've got subsidized U.S. crops that could crash prices for local farmers. At the same time, it puts India's premium non-GM export status with key markets like the EU and Japan in jeopardy. So you have this direct conflict, the U.S. demanding total access and India promising to protect its own farmers. So when you weigh the benefits against these really high costs, you have to circle back to that central question this source is asking: is this really a balanced agreement? Well, the view from the American side seems pretty darn clear. The U.S. Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, basically said it all. She framed the deal as a major win for the U.S., thanking the administration for, and I'm quoting here, delivering for our American farmers and pumping cash into rural America. And that really underscores the source's interpretation here, that this whole deal was driven by an America First agenda, with the main goal being to boost U.S. exports and shrink its trade deficit with India.
And all of this leads to the source's central argument that this deal might be less about mutual benefit and more about simple economic survival for India. The idea is that India might have accepted these massive costs to prevent something even worse, losing access to its vital U.S. export market altogether. Which brings us right back to where we started. Was this a shrewd strategic win for India, a way to secure its economic future in a critical market? Or was it a costly concession made from a position of weakness, with its hand effectively forced? That's really the unresolved question at the heart of this entire new trade deal.